Your emotions are exposed, and that's why you're predictable. The dangerous question is, who benefits from you caring so much? There is a lie you were raised with, a comforting lie, a dangerous one, that caring makes you human, that emotions make you strong, that attachment is love. But history exposes something darker, something forbidden. The individuals who shaped empires, manipulated nations, controlled crowds, were not emotional. They were detached. Machiavelli understood it. The Stoics practiced it. Nietzsche weaponized it. Jung warned about it. And today, it's being used against you. Because the more you care, the easier you are to control. This is the exposed secret of detachment, and once you understand it, you will never experience power the same way again. Here's the first mechanism. Caring creates leverage. The moment something matters deeply to you, you can be threatened, ignored, manipulated, withheld from. Machiavelli wrote this clearly. Men are driven by fear and desire, not loyalty. If someone knows what you desire, they can move you. If someone knows what you fear losing, they own you. This is why emotional people are predictable. Their reactions are exposed. Their behavior is programmable. Example: negotiations, relationships, workplace politics. The person who cares more always loses. Why? Because detachment removes urgency, and urgency is weakness. Here's the forbidden insight. People don't respect love, they respect self-control. And when you stop caring about outcomes, others start orbiting you. But what happens psychologically when you detach completely? The ancient armor. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. Epictetus said, "You suffer not from events, but from your judgment of them." Detachment is not apathy, it is sovereignty. Stoicism teaches one brutal rule: control what is yours, release everything else. When you stop attaching your worth to outcomes, you become emotionally invulnerable. Example: insults stop working, rejection loses its sting, failure becomes data, not trauma. This is why Stoics appear calm in chaos. They've already let go. Here's the secret most people miss. Detachment doesn't kill ambition, it sharpens it. You act without emotional noise. You decide without fear. But Jung warned that detachment has a shadow. Carl Jung exposed something disturbing. What you cling to controls you. Attachment creates projection. You don't see people as they are. You see them as emotional resources. Love becomes dependency. Approval becomes identity. Attention becomes addiction. Example: why toxic relationships last. Why people beg for validation. Why silence feels painful. It's not love, it's psychological hunger. Here's the forbidden truth. When you detach, people feel unsafe around you because they can't read you, they can't hook you emotionally, and humans fear what they can't control. But Nietzsche takes this even further. Nietzsche didn't want comfort, he wanted power. He warned against emotional slavery, against herd emotions, against reactive living. He who has a why can endure any how. Detachment gives you that why. When you stop reacting emotionally, you rise above manipulation. Example: social pressure fails, guilt loses force, fear dissolves. Here's the dangerous insight. Most morality is emotional control, guilt, shame, obligation. Detachment frees you from invisible chains. But Machiavelli reveals the final weapon. Machiavelli was hated for telling the truth.
He said leaders must appear compassionate, but never be controlled by compassion. Why? Because mercy clouds judgment, emotion delays action. Example: politics, corporate leadership, high-stakes decisions. The calm one decides, the emotional one reacts. Here's the forbidden lesson. Detachment isn't cruelty, it's clarity. When you stop caring about being liked, you gain influence. When you stop chasing approval, people seek yours. The ultimate secret. Detachment is misunderstood. It doesn't mean you feel nothing, it means nothing controls you. You choose when to care, when to act, when to walk away. And that is true power. If this exposed something uncomfortable, good. That means it worked. How the detached quietly dominate everything. Because what comes next is colder, sharper, more dangerous. Detachment is not the end, it is the beginning. Most people learn to feel less, very few learn to use it. This is where power truly begins. Because once emotions stop controlling you, you gain access to something rare, strategic clarity. And history proves this. The most feared minds were never loud, never emotional, never reactive. They were calm, detached, and always 3 steps ahead. Here is what no one tells you. Detachment rewires your nervous system. Emotional people live in survival mode, fight, flight, freeze. Detached individuals live in regulation. When others panic, you observe. When others rush, you wait. This creates a biological hierarchy. Calm signals dominance, reactivity signals submission. Example: interrogations, high-stakes negotiations, conflict situations. The calmer person always wins. Your silence triggers anxiety in emotional people. They fill the gap, they reveal themselves. But how do you weaponize this silence? Silence is not absence, it is pressure. Carl Jung called this psychic tension. When you don't react, people project. They imagine rejection, disapproval, threat. Example: text messages unanswered, eye contact held too long, no emotional response to provocation. The other person collapses inward. Here's the forbidden truth. Silence forces others to negotiate with themselves, and most people lose that negotiation. But detachment has a dark cost. Let's expose the shadow. Detachment separates you. You stop bonding easily. You stop reacting socially. You stop needing reassurance. This makes you powerful, but also lonely. Nietzsche warned about this. The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. Example: people call you cold, arrogant, unreachable. But here's the hidden truth. They are reacting to lost access. So how do masters balance detachment and influence? True power is not total detachment, it is selective attachment. You choose what deserves emotion, you choose when to engage. Machiavelli mastered this. Appear warm, remain unreachable. Example: leaders who listen but don't bend, lovers who care but don't chase. Here's the forbidden formula. Care less than they expect, more than they deserve. Now comes the most dangerous technique. This is where detachment becomes dominance. Humans are reward-driven. Attention, validation, reaction. When you remove emotional rewards, behavior changes. Example: ignoring manipulation, refusing emotional bait, not explaining yourself.
People escalate, then submit. You don't need to punish, just stop feeding. But detachment must be disciplined. Detachment without discipline becomes cruelty. Stoicism warned against this. Rules you must follow. Never detach from values. Never detach from purpose. Never detach from self-respect. Detach only from outcomes, from validation, from control. Example: you work without obsession. You love without dependency. You walk away without anger. This creates quiet authority. But how do you train this? Daily practice. Detachment is trained, not learned. Daily practices. Pause before reacting. Delay responses intentionally. Observe emotions without obeying them. Jung called this active observation. Nietzsche called it self-mastery. Example: you feel anger. You don't express it. You analyze it. Power grows silently. Now the final revelation. Detached people are dangerous. They cannot be bribed emotionally. They cannot be threatened socially. They cannot be controlled psychologically. This is why society trains you to care too much, because caring keeps you predictable. Detachment breaks the system. If this shifted something inside you, you're ready. Remain calm, remain unreadable, remain dangerous, because what's coming next is where true control begins. How detachment controls attraction, fear, and human behavior. If you're still here, you've already changed, because this is where detachment stops being philosophy and becomes influence. Most people think attraction is about emotion, leadership is about charisma, fear is about intimidation. That's a lie. The truth is colder, quieter, more effective. The ones who control attraction never chase it. The ones who command loyalty never beg for it. And the ones who inspire fear never raise their voice. They detach, and what follows is obedience. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Need repels, detachment attracts. Humans don't chase what chases them. They chase what doesn't need them. Jung explained this through projection. When you are emotionally unavailable, others project value onto you. They fill the silence. They imagine depth. They create meaning. Example: the person who replies instantly is taken for granted. The one who doesn't rush becomes intriguing. Attraction isn't built by affection, it's built by restraint. But attraction is only the surface. Detachment in love. Love collapses when it becomes dependency. Stoicism warned against this. When you need someone to feel whole, you give them power over your nervous system. Detached love looks different. You enjoy, but you don't cling. You give, but you don't sacrifice yourself. Example: you don't argue to be understood. You don't beg to be chosen. You don't fear being left. The partner who can walk away is the one who is respected. But detachment doesn't only attract love, it creates fear. Why detached people are feared. Fear doesn't come from aggression, it comes from unreadability. Machiavelli understood this deeply. When people can't predict your reaction, they tread carefully. Detached individuals don't explode, they don't threaten, they don't explain. They simply withdraw. Example: a calm leader during chaos, a silent response to disrespect, no emotional retaliation. Silence forces accountability, and most people fear accountability. But detachment becomes lethal against manipulators. Manipulation requires participation, guilt, fear, urgency. Detach from those, and manipulation starves. Jung called this withdrawing psychic energy. When you don't react emotionally, manipulators lose leverage. Example: gaslighting fails without self-doubt. Guilt tripping dies without guilt. Provocation collapses without anger.
You don't defeat manipulators by exposing them. You defeat them by becoming boring to them. But elites don't stop here. Here's how elites use detachment. Study power structures closely. The higher someone rises, the more emotionally distant they become. This is not arrogance, it's insulation. Machiavelli advised rulers to limit emotional access. Why? Because access creates influence. Example: executives don't overshare, leaders don't vent, decision makers don't seek approval. Emotional distance signals hierarchy. The one who cares least about perception controls perception. But detachment must be balanced to avoid becoming hollow. The line between power and emptiness. Here's the final warning. Detachment without purpose becomes emptiness. Nietzsche warned about nihilism. If you detach from everything, you dissolve. The masters detach selectively. They detach from approval, outcome, validation, but they remain attached to purpose, values, self-respect. Example: they act decisively, they love consciously, they walk away cleanly. The strongest people feel deeply, but never controllably. Now the final synthesis. Detachment is not emotional death, it is emotional command. You no longer are pulled, you choose. You no longer react, you decide. You no longer chase, you attract. And the world responds accordingly. Because humans instinctively follow those who cannot be emotionally owned.
How to rebuild identity after detachment. Until then, say less, feel less, see more. And remember, the one who cares least is never powerless. Rebuilding identity, authority, and inner control. You no longer see the world the same way. You've detached. You've withdrawn emotional energy. You've become unreadable. But now comes the most dangerous phase. What replaces what you let go? Because detachment without reconstruction creates emptiness, confusion, drift. This is where most people fail and where the few become unshakable. When you detach, your old identity collapses. You were once defined by approval, reaction, belonging, emotion. Remove those and the ego panics. Jung called this phase the void. It feels quiet, lonely, directionless. Example: you stop reacting, stop chasing, stop explaining, and suddenly you don't know who you are anymore. This discomfort is not failure. It's proof the conditioning is breaking. So how do the strong rebuild? Here's the shift. You stop asking, do they approve? You start asking, is this aligned? Stoicism trained this relentlessly. Marcus Aurelius wrote not for praise, but for self-command. Example: you act without witnesses. You choose without applause. You walk away without resentment. The moment you stop seeking permission, you radiate authority. People sense it, even if they can't explain it. But authority without empathy becomes tyranny. Psychological mechanism, controlled empathy. This is where many go wrong. They confuse detachment with cruelty. Nietzsche warned against this. Power without humanity collapses inward. True detachment does not kill empathy, it controls it. You feel, but you don't drown. You listen, but you don't absorb. Example: you understand pain, but you don't carry it. You help, but without self-sacrifice. Empathy is strongest when it is optional. Now comes the final weapon, the untouchable mindset. Psychological mechanism, emotional immunity. When detachment and identity merge, you become difficult to affect. Insults don't land, praise doesn't inflate you, loss doesn't destroy you. Machiavelli would call this invulnerability. Stoics called it tranquility. Jung called it integration. Nietzsche called it self-overcoming. Example: you don't need revenge, you don't need closure,
You don't need the last word. Forbidden insight. Needing nothing is the highest leverage. So why doesn't everyone do this? Why most people can't detach? Because detachment costs comfort. It costs belonging, emotional highs, tribal validation. Most people prefer chains they recognize over freedom they don't understand. Example, they stay reactive, attached, predictable, because detachment forces self-responsibility. Forbidden truth. Freedom is heavier than dependence. And this leads to the final law, the law of sovereignty. Here is the final truth. Detachment is not about dominance over others. It is dominance over self. You are no longer pulled by fear, approval, urgency, emotion. You move deliberately, speak selectively, care intentionally. And because of that, others adjust to you. Not because you demand it, but because you are no longer available to be controlled. If this final part completed the transformation, you are no longer emotional prey. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer owned. Subscribe if this series shifted you. Like if you felt the internal silence grow. And remember this above all. Detachment doesn't make you empty. It makes you sovereign. Say less, react slower, choose carefully. Because the one who governs himself never needs to control anyone else.